Put your eye to the sky, boy, and wonder. Maybe there's a kingdom above the weather. Oh, and whether you're gonna get on in is up to him. Carry onward like some songbird, beautiful stranger. Carry onward like some songbird, beautiful stranger. Singing, oh my Lord, come carry me home. Oh my Lord, come carry me home. I'm singing, oh my God, oh my Lord, oh my God, oh my Lord, oh my God, oh my Lord, oh my Lord. Carry onward like some songbird, beautiful stranger. Carry onward like some songbird, beautiful stranger.
Set free by the teen angels from his prehistoric block of glacier ice comes the world's first superhero, Captain Caveman. Now the constant companion to the teen angels, Brenda, Dee Dee, and Taffy in their hilarious and sometimes scary mystery missions. Get ready for Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels.
It's so easy to use. Geico.com. A caveman could do it.
What?
Oh, no,
Not cool.
I did not know you were there. It's so easy to use. Geico.com. A caveman could do it.
What's that supposed to mean?
Did you hear that? That is really condescending.
Seriously, we apologize. We had no idea you guys were still around.
Yeah, next time maybe do a little research.
Gentlemen, are we ready to order?
I'll have the roast duck with the mango salsa.
I don't have much of an appetite, thank you.
And everywhere I go, there's always something to remind me of another place.
How can it be offensive if it's true?
Okay, first of all, I'm not 100% in love with your tone right now.
Tone aside, historically, you guys have struggled to adapt.
Yeah, right. Walking upright, discovering fire, inventing the wheel, laying the foundation for all mankind. You're right. Good point. Sorry we couldn't get that to you sooner.
Connie, your reaction?
Sounds like someone woke up on the wrong side of the rock.
Don't worry about those guys.
I am just so sick of this.
Dude, what do you expect? You went with Geico.com. What, to save some money?
It's my life, okay?
Just a little loyalty would be nice, that's all.
What? Having Geico makes me less of a caveman?
Tina's here. We're getting back together. Hey,
Give us a minute.
Why does that bother you?
Why does it bother me? So easy a caveman can do it?
Well, it's just a commercial.
Okay. Well, what if it said Geico.com, so easy a therapist can do it?
Well, that commercial wouldn't make sense to me.
Why not?
Well, therapists
Are what? Smart? My mother's calling.
Would you one time let me be myself so I can shine with my own light? Let me be myself. Please, would you one time let me be myself so I can shine with my own light? Let me be myself for a while, if you don't mind. Let me be myself. Would you one time let me be myself so I can shine with my own light. Let me be myself. Please, will you one time let me be myself so I can shine with my own light. Let me be myself for a while, if you don't mind. Let me be.
I'm going to show you guys some of the documents showing the white races of Europe, and we can get a better perspective as to who the Moors were fighting. These are the albinos and the beasts of Europe. And the Moors were fighting these people for hundreds of years prior to the so-called transatlantic slave trade. And one interesting thing I wanted to show you is that when you look at these beasts and albinos and how they have achieved what they've been able to achieve in just a few hundred years, keeping in mind that they were considered wildmen just a few hundred years ago, and they had no last names. Many of them didn't even have first names. And I wanted to show you this because I found this very interesting. If you see here the wildmen, and you look at the clothing that the people are wearing to the left, you can see here they're wearing this clothing to cover up their hairy bodies. So I found that very interesting. And something else I found in the British Library was one of the oldest genealogy charts, one of the first ones made for white people. And as you can see at the bottom of that genealogy chart, you see 2 Wildmen. So they're showing that their ancestry comes from the caveman. So that should give you something to think about, considering that just a few hundred years later, today, we have people like the Queen of England who claim to be of the royal bloodline of Egyptians and Cushites who ruled the earth. They even found the remains of a boy who was buried at Stonehenge in Europe. He was buried in Europe, but he actually came from the Mediterranean Sea in Africa. And he came to Europe 3,500 years ago. So that's in 1500 BC. So we're told that the Moors arrived in Europe in 700 AD. But here we have black people out of Africa coming to Europe over 2,000 years before the Moors arrived in 700 AD.
Is the Wildman a myth? Shalom and Shalom. In this video, we're going to be taking a closer look at the concept called the Wildman, and we're going to be taking a look at illustrated manuscripts, art, sculptures, relics, statues, plaques, so on and so forth of the so-called Wildman. Now, what is the so-called Wildman? We're going to read a little excerpt we have here. Now it reads, "The Wildman is a mythological," I got mythological in quotation marks, "figure that appears in the artwork of literature of medieval Europe, comparable to the satyr or faun type in the classical mythology and to Sylvanus, the Roman god of the woodlands. The defining characteristics of the figure is its wildness. From the 12th century, they were consistently depicted as being covered with hair." Now we have an image of the Wildman on the screen right now, on this book or leaflet that we have here. Now just by examining this image, who does this look like today? I'll leave as that. Now with that being said, let's get on with the video. In this image, you can see a bunch of wild men chilling in the forest, and as you can see, once again, they are hairy all over, naked and pale. In this image of the wild men, You can see him holding a tree trunk, and it looks like he has someone attached to it, almost looking like he's kidnapping somebody. Now look at this image of the Wildman here. He's in a beast-like state. As you can see, he's on all fours, naked, hairy, in the forest. Here's another variation of that same image. Here's another, once again, in a beast-like state, hairy as hell, in the forest. Now I included this image because we want to read what's on it. At the top it says medieval ridiculousness. Some medieval manuscripts are populated by woodwoses. The Oxford English Dictionary defines a woodwose as a wild man of the woods. So basically a woodwose is just another way to say wild man. Woodwoses are covered in shaggy hair. Now if you had to pick out a demographic of people who has this shaggy hair, you know, I'm just asking a question, that's all. And are often seen trying to carry away maidens. Now where have we seen this before? So we just read how the woodwose or the wildman carried away maidens. So I wanted to link up the wildman with the cavemen because they seem awfully familiar with each other. But I've got here caveman courtship and its mythology, in quotations. Specific cultural myth of the mating behavior of the cavemen, where the caveman would club a woman over the head and drag her by the hair to his cave. This of course bears no resemblance to anything real. Now let me ask a question. If these wild men had a darker complexion, would it be still classified as a myth? I know, I just thought the term clubbing, you know how dudes go out to the club and then they bring a woman home? I wonder if this way it stems from. Very interesting. Now look at this piece of tapestry here. This is found at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. Now let's just analyze the first half of the title. It says wild men and Moors. Now we already know who the Wildmen are, so that must mean the Moors in this tapestry must be the black figures. But wait a minute, I thought the Moors weren't black. Now just by analyzing this piece of tapestry here, we can see the wild men to the left. They are naked, they are hairy all over, they are pale, and they're charging the castle with sticks and stones and tree branches. And who is defending the castle? Who is in the castle? We can see the black figures. We can see within the castle the king, the queen, the princess, and we can see the knights with their bow and arrows. These must be the Moors, right? Because once again, let's read the title. Wild men, we know who they are, and the Moors. So the "and" must be referring to the black figures in this castle. But something ain't adding up, especially during this time period and in conventional history and what's taught. Shouldn't black people be in Africa living in huts during this time period? Yet we see here they are actually the king and the queen and the knights, and they are defending their castle from pale figures, hairy all over, running around naked, uncivilized. Hey, I'm just making a statement. You guys can come to your own conclusion on this. But go look this up. Just type in wild men versus the Moors. Now what the heck is going on in this piece of medieval art here? Look at this shit. You can see the black men fully clothed. They even got swords in their hand. And right next to them, you can see these weird pale looking figures riding the goats. What the heck was really going on during this time period? So-called black people that are watching this, there's no way the powers that be will lie to you about your own history, right? But what the heck is going on, man? Look at this image. I don't even know what to say about this. Hey. You guys, come to your own conclusion. Now right here, brothers, is a real man that lived. His name is Petrus Gonzalez, who lived during the Middle Ages. Now, as you can see just from his portrait, he looks like a wild man of the woods. Now we're going to read some information about him. It says, Petrus Gonzalez, referred to as the man of the woods. Now I'm going to read that one more time. Petrus Gonzalez, referred to as the man of the woods, became famous during his lifetime because of his condition hypertrichosis, which is basically excessive growth of body hair. But continuing on, his life at various courts in Italy and France has been well chronicled. Now we're going to take a look at that real quick. Petrus first came to the court of Henry II, King of France, in 1547 and was sent from there to the court of Margaret of Parma, region of the Netherlands. He married while there. Later, he was moved into the court of Alexander Farnese, Duke of Parma. 4 of his 7 children were also afflicted with hypertrichosis. Now after we finish reading this, we're going to get a portrait of his family. But continuing on, his family became an object of medical inquiry, among others. Despite living and acting as a nobleman, Gonzalez and his hairy children were not considered fully human in the eyes of their contemporaries. Gonzalez eventually settled in Italy with his wife. Now this is a portrait of his family. Now at the beginning of the video, when I showed all those illustrated manuscripts, the wall paintings and the art of the Wild family, tell me you don't see it here. So once again, is the Wild man a myth? Now this image right here is of a little boy called Lalit. Now there was a mini YouTube documentary series on him called The Boy with Werewolf Syndrome, Born Different. Now as you can see, he looks like the so-called Wildman, right? Now we're going to find some other images of the so-called Wildman or people with hypertrichosis syndrome that I found floated on the internet. So now I'm going to ask you guys a question. If you was to take this wild man here, bathe him, shave him down, clothe him, clean him and civilize him, who does he look like? I'm going to ask it once again. If you was to shave him, bathe him, clothe him and civilize him, who does he look like today? Now I'm sure you've got that answer in your head. Now with that being said, hypothetically speaking, if those people were in rulership today, I'm sure they will control mainstream media, what you see in the textbooks, what you see on TV, what you read, the education system, Hollywood movies, documentary channels, and with them being in rulership, hypothetically speaking of course, people of a darker complexion, their history always relegates to slavery and they really didn't contribute to anything. they may throw a bone now again, say that a darker skinned person invented this or was a pioneer of that, but for the most part, they were mainly slaves, you know, hypothetically speaking, of course. Now, could it be that they've purposely lied and they hid their own history where they were in a lower state and, I don't know, probably bleached over, washed over, iconoclasmed certain artifacts, relics, sculptures, statues to make them look like themselves? Oh no, I'm just asking a question, hypothetically speaking, of course. Now, for those who know, we know who the kings, the queens, the aristocrats, the noblemen, the warriors, the soldiers, the knights, who the original ruling class were. And for those of you who have watched my previous videos, we went through artifacts, relics, sculptures, monuments, statues, coats of arms, historical documentation to prove these things. Now, I can't really go into too much detail on the Wildman because of the platform that we are on, but you guys can come to your own conclusion. Giving all praises to Most High Yahweh, giving acknowledgement to Yahweh Shai, is the Wildman a myth?
The Negro Question, Part 4, The Missing Link, by Lee Cummins.
And he continues quoting Benjamin Franklin from this thing he wrote in 1751. And he says again, Benjamin Franklin, why should the Palatine Moors, Germans, be suffered to swarm into our settlements? He's like, why are these Moors, German Moors, coming over here? Why should we allow them to come over here? Now remember who was a so-called Palatine or German Moor? That was Abraham Lincoln's family. Through his father's side, they're black Germans. They were swarthy Germans. They were Moor, Palatine Moors. All right, Abraham Lincoln. They will never adopt our customs any more than they can adopt our complexion, white skin. He says all of Africa, Asia, and America except us are black. All right, America is what? Black. Russia, Italy, Spain, France, Swedes, and the Germans are black. The German tapestry, 1400 AD. All right, what this is showing these wild, pale-skinned people, wild, right? And they come in to invade this castle, which is filled with swarthy, dark-skinned, melanated people, all right, of dark complexion, all right, or so-called black Europeans in their castle. All right, you can look that up. All right, so I wanted to show you the actual tapestry zoomed in. All right, so like I was saying, I wasn't kidding. So it shows a bunch of pale-skinned people, right? Look like wild men. They got some kind of tattoos or whatever on, and they're trying to invade this castle right here. All right, so you see, these are melanated people. You see their complexion. Look at that. Look how they're dressed. Look at that bow and arrow. Bow and arrow. Who has bow and arrows? All right, so you see up here in the windows. All right, you see down here, so you can see. See up here in the windows, you see? Dark complexion people, right? Swarthy Germans. This isn't Germany. They're getting their castle invaded. All right, and there's people on the other side behind them too. So you see they're over here hiding. He's fighting. They're over here fighting, trying to get him off. All right, look at it coming. Look who's coming. All right, so this is real history. This is from 1400 AD. You can't ignore this. So what happened to all these swarthy, so-called black Europeans? What happened to them? They just disappeared? They ended up in Africa and stuff? No. A lot of them were sent over here during the times of indentured servitude, going through this middle passage, being called Black Irish, Black Scots, Black Dutch. All right? Hope you understand a little bit more now.
a South German tapestry. This is from the Bulletin of the Museum of Fine Arts, Volume 56, number 303, pages 5 to 13, plus 15 to 17, 12 pages. Again, Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. A South German tapestry. It is indeed a matter for congratulation that the first German tapestry, the first German tapestry to be acquired for the museum should be an outstanding example of an important period in history of European tapestry weaving. The purchase of this tapestry, once a part of the Sigmaringen Hohenzollern collection, was made possible through a fund established by the bequest of Charles Potter Kling. Though precise dating of the tapestry from evidence now available is not possible, there are many reasons to believe that it was woven sometime during the last decade of the 14th century or the first decade of the 15th century, right? Historians know it's from that time period, okay? Might be even older. The subject of the tapestry, startlingly at variance with the subjects of other tapestries in the museum's collection, present an enticing iconographic puzzle. Beginning at the left-hand end of this long narrow strip of tapestry, probably intended to hang above a row of benches, we follow the actions of strange bearded men, clothed in handsomely styled renderings of the traditional hairy covering of the mythological wild man. Armed with stones and branches, the wild men approach a moated castle defended by dusky Moors, dark complexion, so-called black Moors, dusky Moors, all right? So who is the wild man and who is the ones in the castle? All right, pay attention. From the upper windows of the castle, the king and queen watch the approaching horde. The attackers, in contrast to the dark-skinned defenders, all right, again, in contrast to the dark-skinned defenders are giants. But though the danger seems overwhelming, the drawbridge is down and two bowmen advance toward the invaders. To the right beyond the castle, a wild man crowned with flowers struggles with a lion. Two wild men attack a winged dragon, while still farther to the right, another wild man grabs the horn and right leg of a spotted unicorn in an effort to subdue him. The small trees which punctuate these incidents have smooth, sinuous brown trunks, each species of tree indicated by the variations of the elaborate polychrome patterns of the tuft of leaves at the top. Birds flock to one tree to feed on its berries, and tailless brown apes climb the trunk and play in the branches of another. Beyond the apes, a wild man mounted on a stag rides proudly on. Two wild men bring offerings, spoils of the chase, to a wild woman, who with two children is seated on the foot of a stylized pyramidal hill. Subtly calculated irregularities in the angular rock formations of the hill, from which grow small trees and flowering plants, give variety to a composition which frames and focuses attention on the strange family scene. The head of the wild woman, her fair hair crowned with leaves, is a silhouette against the rosy shadows of the rocks. The foreground is patterned with small, varicolored mounds, each framing a stylized plant, while at intervals rabbits and other small animals are seen emerging from behind the little mounds. These wild people are outside the clearly defined boundaries of the medieval feudal hierarchy. Their rank and place in society is not shown by the style of their garments. They are clothed, if we may so describe the delicate pattern of which the forms of their bodies are delineated, in soft garments stripped gray, cream, pink, yellow, brown, and green, in a manner to suggest delicately dyed furs. The two wild men who approach the wild woman, one half kneeling as he offers an animal's leg to the woman, an animal's leg, the other slightly bent under the weight of a dead lion on his back. Merely by the angles of their bodies complete the frame and background for the woman with her children, continuing and supporting the rocky hill as the apex of the triangle. The Negro Question, Part 4, The Missing Link, by Lee Cummins.
Back in the book, and it's the same image right here. Right, and he says, I had to slow cropping the image, the tapestry down so that we could retrieve the secrets that are hidden on it. As you can see, the black German soldiers are protecting the black German king, queen, and prince who are looking out of the castle. I have slowed the tapestry down even further on the next page. It says iron arrowhead, iron lookout perches, and bronze horn. All right. Professor Boyd Dawkins, page 6 of this book, The Little Black Basque, brought the knowledge of iron and bronze with them. Look closely at the tip of the arrowhead. It's made of iron. Do a double take and look at the lookout perches. They are made of iron, and the horn appears to be made of bronze. Professor Boyd Dawkins was describing a highly technological black civilization in Europe, not Africa. Again, not Africa.
This is Wildman in the Middle Ages, a study in art, sentiment, and demonology, by Richard Bernheimer, Harvard University Press. And real quick, I go to chapter 1, The Natural History of the Wild Man, just to read a little bit about this here instead. This book deals with literary and artistic figure whose imaginary character is proved by its appearance. It is a hairy man, curiously compounded of human and animal traits, without, however, sinking to the level of an ape. It exhibits upon its naked human anatomy a growth of fur, leaving bare only its face, feet, and hands, at times its knees and elbows, or the breast of the female of the species. Frequently the creature is shown wielding a heavy club or mace, or the trunk of a tree, and since its body is usually naked except for a shaggy covering, it may hide its nudity under a strand of twisted foliage worn around the loins. Where any characteristics other than these appear, there is a possibility that instead of a wild man, we may be beholding another imaginary figure such as a devil, faun, or satyr. The creature itself may appear without its fur, its club, or its loin ornaments. Any one of its characteristics may be said to designate the species. This strange relative of Homo sapiens, a lively and sometimes pungent commentary on the bestial side of his nature, plays an astoundingly persistent, although on the whole subordinate part in the art and literature of the Middle Ages. But even though the frequency of the wild man's appearance in art and letters is not quite matched by the importance accorded to him in medieval thinking, his ubiquity must be regarded as a sign that he represented a major, if unacknowledged, trend of thought. All right, everybody was talking about this wild man. So is it really myth? His presence is like the running commentary with which a man's half-conscious imaginary accompanies his conscious ideals and aspirations, a reminder that there are basic and primitive impulses clamoring for satisfaction. Medieval literature and art are shot through with the mythology of the wild man. We find him in the clipped verses of French Arthurian romance, in the epics of German minstrel singers, and in the writings of Cervantes and Spenser. The whole vast field of late medieval secular art is his playground, from prints and paintings by Albrecht Dürer and Peter Bruegel to the love caskets and tapestries which medieval swains presented to their ladies, or the tools of chivalry, such as saddles and ornament weapons. His place in medieval daily life was assured by the appearance of his image on stove tiles, candlesticks, and drinking cups, and on a larger scale on house signs, chimneys, and the projecting beams of frame houses. His figures even invaded religious buildings and in liturgical books, being found on the borders of illuminated manuscripts, on capitals, choir stalls, baptismal fonts, tomb plates, and as a gargoyle on the eaves of churches. All right, so you see where they found all this. So you see how the wild man is portrayed in all this history, right? And all this art and all these buildings. Is it more than just myth? Once on the facade of a Spanish church, it observed the place which should have been given to the saints, standing full size on the jambs of its main portal. So great then was the ubiquity of the wild man in medieval life, and so wide his acceptance in art, that the question arises what function, individual and social, a figure such as this could have exerted and what needs it could have satisfied within the framework of medieval civilization. Right, so I wanted to go to page 147, is where they mention the tapestry we're talking about today. And it says here, there are in one tapestry only hairy wild men assailing blackamoors, including a black king and queen, including a black king and a black queen. I'm going to read from this one real quick. This book is called The Wild Man, Medieval Myth and Symbolism. Timothy Husband, with the assistance of Gloria Gilmore House. A couple of the images here in this book, very interesting. It says here, Wild Man, pen and ink illustration from Ballade de une homme sauvage, France. This is from around 1500. In the introduction of the book, it says here, thought to live in remote, mountainous and forested regions, the wild man especially flourished in the wooded or alpine regions of the German-speaking lands, right? German, right where the tapestry was made, right? Showing these wild men in Germany trying to invade his black king and queen, such as the Harz, Fichtel, and Algo mountains of Germany. That's where the legends have them, in these mountains of Germany. The Alpine regions of Carinthia and the Tyrol in Austria, and Graubünden and Wallis in Switzerland. In many such areas, the myths have survived to this day, still celebrated in festivals, masquerades, and dramas. Not limited to these regions, however, the wild man myth thrived throughout Western and Central Europe. In these forests, the wild man was said to make his home in caves, rocky crags, dank burrows, hollows in tree trunks, and other rude places. Occasionally, he fashioned primitive hovels of branches and mud, and 11th century Hessian documents refers to such an abode as a Wilderow Wibu Hus, wild woman house. Toward the end of the 14th century, Heinrich von Hessler states in Die Apocalypse that the wild man lived only in places unfit for human habitation, in fens and woods, in water and in mountains, in caves and in bushes. All right, and it has all these other languages. Notions of the wild man habitat had changed little by the end of the 16th century, as Edmund Spencer's description, The Fairy Queen, indicates. Just want to go over this image right here before we continue. It says, Wild Man, detail of a manuscript illumination from the Luttrell Psalter, England, from 1335 to 1340. London, the British Library manuscript. All right, this is a photocopy from the 1300s, right? This is all over their art. You know, how much of a myth is it? By every account, the wild man's behavior matched his primitive surroundings, strong enough to uproot trees. He was violent and aggressive, not only against wild animals, but also against his own kind. What does that sound like? His brutish, contentious nature expressed itself in a natural combativeness against which neither beast nor man was equal, though his club, and sometimes only his bare hands, was his only weapon. With his instinctive knowledge of the ways of wild beast, the wild man was skilled hunter, but in spite of his physical supremacy, shrank from contact with humans, and frequently even with his own kind. Indeed, his inept social abilities apparently limited him to only that cooperative union required for procreation. Like in agriculture, he was forced to eke out a subsistence from hunting and gathering. Though taught to crawl around on all fours, he scratched tubers and roots from the ground, picked berries and gnawed on verdure. When he killed game, he ate it completely raw. According to Chatrien de Troyes and Vane, by many accounts, the wild man also indulged in cannibalism. By the 16th century, this habit brought him into association with werewolves and other flesh eaters. Wild men were commonly thought to abduct children, but often only to fulfill parental instincts. Instances of wild folk substituting changelings for human children are also recorded. Although he was a hunter, the wild man was frequently hunted. Illustrations of the 14th century depict the wild man on all fours at bay, pursued by hounds and hunters on horseback. Incapable of speech, the wild man muttered only unintelligible sounds or none at all. Want to show some more images here. It says the Wild Man at Bay, detail of manuscripts, illumination from Psalter of Queen of Mary, England, 1300 to 1325. All right, look at that. The Wild Man, old Harry, dogs going after him. It says here, Wild Man playing a Rebec Orpheus, wooden bread mold, Switzerland, 16th century. Okay, check it out. Shows Nebuchadnezzar cast out among the beast. Nebuchadnezzar, the Wild Man, detail of manuscript illumination from the Bible of San Pedro de Roda, about 1000 AD. Look at that, Paris, the Wild Man. And another one with Nebuchadnezzar cast out. Goes the Wild Man right here. And I just want to show some in color that they have in this book. Pretty cool images. We got dragons. We got the people with the face chest people. The chest face people, right? Big ear people. And then we got the hairy Wild Man. All different types of humanoids, all right? Addressing these myths of Middle Ages. Here's another Wild Man drawing depiction. All right, and you see the Wild Man got the boars he brought with them to help him fight. It says Alexander in combat with wild men and beasts. Okay, Alexander. And of course, this is the one we're talking about today. This is the German tapestry, right? Showing the black king and queen with their people fighting off the Wild Man, the pale-skinned Wild Man. All right, it says here, Wild Men storming the Moor's castle. Wild Men storming who? The Moor's castle. Wild Men storming the Moors. So-called Negro people in Germany, right? In a castle. And they're the Wild Men. This is the other part again of the tapestry we've already talked about. One of them is fighting the lion. The other one's fighting the dragon. And another one's fighting the unicorn. Again, to me, the unicorn and the dragon are the same line. These are all the lineages, the Khans. Come on, the Drakons, the Amarus, and the Judas. What's going on? A wild woman. Look at this wild woman. She's pale skinned. Wild woman with a unicorn. The wild woman with the dragon. And these are all like wild people. Hairy men right here. 2 wild men and 2 pairs of lovers. And then look at this wood carving, hairy man, a wild man, it says. Some more paintings right here, the Wild Man. And look at this one right here, the Wild Man. Who's the Wild Man? The Wild Man. Look at this. On top of a castle, the Wild Man. And then they depicted King Kong. And more wild men and wild women with a coat of arms. Wild couples supporting the arms of the Grafschaft Kaiberg. Wild men. And wild men on top of the castle. On the wild men storming the Moor's castle and other scenes. Germany, Alsace, Strasbourg. About 1400, all right? Around 1400. Where is it located again? Boston Museum of Fine Arts. From left to right, 5 tall wild men covered with striped woolly body hair and armed with stone sticks, clubs, and fronts attack a castle peopled with small Moors. 2 black defenders in long mantles, one on the near side of the moat and the other on the drawbridge, draw their bows against the aggressors. The Moorish king and queen, both crowned, watch the foray from 2 windows over the castle gate. 4 Moors, one in each turret, brandish weapons or gesticulate, while 4 others watch from the crenellated wall below. The castle stands in a sparse wooded grove. Emerging from the edge of the grove is a stag. In the central section, several wild men with garlands in their hair engage in struggles with various animals. 1 wild man grapples with a rampant lion, raising his club to deliver a blow. 2 other wild men, one with a long pole and another with a club, attempt to kill a basset-like creature, while a 4th engages a unicorn holding its horn in one hand and foreleg in the other. In the right-hand section, a wild woman and 2 children, one seated on her lap and the other at her side, sit in front of the rocky outcropping. The group is approached from both sides by 3 wild men, one on a stag, another with a lion slung over his shoulder, and the third kneeling before her, offering a leg of meat. At the left, The Negro Question, Part 4, The Missing Link, by Lee Cummins.
Says the tapestry shows that the whites lived in tree houses and caves. They were basically poor, while the technology and wealth was in the hands of the blacks. If I was focused on race, I would have missed the true treasure that this tapestry possessed. The real treasure on this tapestry is the technology and the civilization of the black German population. We cannot allow ourselves to fall into the pit of hate because of what the New World Order has done in history. We have an obligation, all colors of people, to seek the truth and to teach the truth, no matter how hard it is to swallow. All right, he makes a point there.
We have an obligation, all colors of people, to seek the truth and to teach the truth, no matter how hard it is to swallow. All right, he makes a